Yo, what up, YouTube? It's not necessarily one for me journal. I've literally just done my 4th of December journal update. So basically, after I'd finished my journal update, excuse me, I sat and watched a little bit of Unsolved Mysteries, and I noticed one thing, right? They always throw in a bit of a U.F.O sighting into their shows, which got me thinking. It reminded me of a couple of things I've seen. Now, I'm going to leave the better one for after I've explained the first one. But straight away I can think of two experiences that come to mind. So the first one, I think it was about 12 years ago, roughly. I was living down on Church Street in Whitby, and anyone that knows that area, there's like loads of little alleyways and stuff. And one night I'd walked down to the harbour, which I used to do regular. I used to walk around the harbour area and stuff because it was practically on my doorstep. And there was this really low light, right, in the sky, basically. This is before drones were popular. Like, they weren't really. I think you could buy them on the market, but they were quite expensive at the time. I'm not sure, and there were no noise either, whatsoever. But yeah, there was this real low light, and it was too big for any civilian drone, definitely. Now, bearing in mind, obviously, I know there's lights in the harbour. You have the what do they call them? They're not towers. They're, to guide the boats. You have those, but I think they're like red and green or something. This were a yellowish, almost pure white type light, really bright, and it was just hanging really low in the sky, basically. I don't think it was aircraft as such. I don't think it was like, definitely not a human-made aircraft anyway. It was more like a star that were hovering, right? That's the only way I can describe it. And I just remember it was really low. It was well within our atmosphere. And at the time I was a little bit going through a depression. And I remember I was just walking around and it seemed to follow me, It was kind of along the lines of an orb, but it were too big for an orb, but that's the best way. A star or an orb is the best way I can really describe it. But it seemed to follow me, and I don't know if I were a little bit paranoid at the time, because I was depressed and stuff, but I went round a couple of the alleyways and it just seemed to follow me. Deadly silent, and it would have been early hours at morning, I think, as well. Anyway, at the time I found it weird, but it weren't like, anything that I worried myself over. Well, I didn't worry myself over the other thing, but I didn't worry myself about it. I thought it was weird, but I soon got over it, basically. But it followed me around several of the alleys, and I kept on changing direction to see if it'd keep following and things like that. And it did, but it was dead slow, this thing. Anyway, moving forward in time, I'd long since come out of my depression by this stage, and I was living in the property that I'm in now. But I'd say it was still about 4 years ago. I think I must have only just moved in here. And I was walking up to here. In fact, it might have been longer than that, actually. I don't know, because basically my parent lives up the road, And I may have even still been at Church Street, walking from Church Street to my parents' house. And again, it was quite late at night. I think it were early hours at morning. But this one were truly amazing. This. So what happened were I was walking. I were actually on a street where my friend lives at the time. I think it was 4 a.m. actually, if I remember correctly. I remember it being about 4 a.m. And my friend's street is dead straight all the way up to my mum's house, basically. And I was walking along, just minding my own business. But I wasn't in my depressed state by this stage. I were like coming out of that period of my life. Um, and I think things in general were looking up. So I weren't, quite a happy bunny at the time. And basically, I was walking along, and all of a sudden, I saw what I thought at first was a shooting star go directly above my head in the direction I was going. And I remember looking up and just thinking to myself, oh, it's beautiful, shooting star, And as soon as I had that thought, it literally stopped dead in the sky for about point two, 0.3 of a millisecond or something. And then it just pinged off like 90 degrees in a complete different direction. And within split second, it were out of the atmosphere. Um, and since that, I've seen meteorite showers where I live and stuff, because we get some really beautiful skies in Whitby. And I've seen the Northern Light living here, and I've seen all kinds of stuff in the sky. I've even seen like hoax stuff, and I've seen those Chinese lantern thingies. Nothing like that. Like I say, it was literally like a shooting star that stopped dead and pinged off in a different direction. And to this day, I've never been able to explain it. Um, it were it wasn't scary to see. It was more amazing to see. It's something that I'd love to see again in my lifetime. I kind of feel as if it's a one-off situation. But like I say, I was just watching Unsolved Mysteries, and they always throw in a bit of UFO stuff. So I just wanted to share with the world my experience, because I still to this day have no idea what it were. I know it wasn't man-made. Other things I've witnessed in the skies, I've seen the what do they call the space station thing? I've seen that go by, and it was way too quick for that. Like I say, it was fast as a shooting star. Um, it was just absolutely amazing. It were actually a lot higher, flying a lot higher altitude than what the space station were when I saw the space station. And like I say, it just stopped dead, pinged off in a different direction, and I could literally see it go to another galaxy, if that makes sense. Like you know how like a plane penetrates the atmosphere when it is at its highest altitude. It kind of did that out of the what I assume is our galaxy. Obviously, I'm not like an expert when it comes to space, but because of reasons like this, I've picked up an interest in astronomy lately. Or I've been built. I've always kind of had an interest in the stars. I remember being a kid and gazing at the stars. I used to sit on my shed roof when I was a kid and just look at nice stars. But where I grew up, compared to where I live now, the skies are just so much more clear where I live now. And I remember I spent some time in Australia, and I used to do the same thing. I used to look at the stars there. I've never seen phenomena like I've seen in Whitby anywhere I've travelled in the world. Um, Equally beautiful views in certain ways. Like for example, in Australia, when you look at the stars, I'm sure you because you're at the bottom of the world, basically. I'm sure they're at a different trajectory. From what I recall in my memory, if you're in certain places in the world, the trajectory, if I'm pronouncing that right, I don't think I am, but the trajectory of the stars and the night sky is like different angles because obviously the world, it's constantly like turning or whatever, and it's supposed to be on the axis too. And basically, I don't know about. I'm assuming that the galaxy basically stays still, and that the Earth orbits the sun or whatever, and can't remember how the moon necessarily works, but I know it's like opposite end to the sun or whatever and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, it's that experience in particular is what really has got me into astronomy. Um, like I say, I've seen other mad stuff in the sky. I once saw a meteor shower here in Whitby. That were after the experience, and it started with I seen one meteorite, um, and I was with my mum at the time. It weren't that late. It was like coming up to midnight sort of time, but it weren't like early hours at morning like the other things. And I remember seeing one and pointing it out to my mum, and all of a sudden they were like, probably at least three or four minimum, maybe eight or so went by, and my mum didn't even see one of them. you know, but bless her, she's retired and stuff. But I think from what I remember, I think she'd looked in the wrong direction. But anyway, because that'd have been an amazing experience for her to see. But yeah, seen some really mad stuff in our skies. Even man-made as well. I've seen like see when for example, the war in Ukraine started. If our air force does an operation, you tend to see a lot of these operations from where I live. Now, where they all fly from, I forget the name of the base, but they end up coming. The flight path seems to come through Whitby or over Whitby, and so we get typhoons quite regular. But I've also seen like spy aircraft. I actually googled into some of them because they're like pure white and they fly at a really high altitude and they're dead silent. And I googled them once, and as far as I know, they're like a reconnaissance aircraft. And what I've noticed since that is you tend to get a typhoon somewhere close by when they're flying. The typhoons are out because it protects the reconnaissance aircraft. So I've seen stuff like that. And I've seen, I once saw a convoy of helicopters and cargo planes, and that were like real sly how they were flying. It were like flying around the cliffs on the area of Whitby where no one really goes, and it were really early hours of the morning in the sense of like morning, daylight type morning. That was back when I lived down in Church Street as well. Seen all sorts, and recently I saw a convoy of aircraft all following each other in the night sky. I think that were about 5 a.m. And when I googled into that, because I always look at the RAF website for things, when I see man-made crafts, it was saying that I did actually post a video. I kept it uh, unlisted, but I shared it with a couple of my friends. When I googled into it, it was saying basically NATO forces. I know it's not necessarily NATO because it's the air force of NATO, but like NATO forces were doing like drills where they were like British, German, and possibly French and stuff like that, all like practicing something. But it was saying that the date that it had given were like, I think it were in the future from when I googled it, so it weren't actually on the day I'd seen it, but it were obvious that that were the operation, and obviously they'd given either a false date because I never saw it on the date that they'd mentioned, and I did look out for it too. Um, or like, they'd covered some up, they were doing a secret mission of some sort, but that was the first time I've seen, like, I think I counted about 20 or 30 aircrafts altogether, somewhere in between 20 and 30. I can't remember the exact figure, 27 or so, um, all following in convoy, really high altitude again, because the thing with the helicopters, that were low altitude, uh, and typhoons tend to fly fairly low and stuff. So I don't know if these were all reconnaissance aircrafts following each other or what, because like I say, they fly quite high. But yeah, I've seen that, but nothing whatsoever compares to this shooting star phenomena that I've seen. Like I say, it was literally a shooting star straight over the top of my head, and I was like, wow, just amazed by the shooting star. Like, if it had carried on straight, I'd have just thought it was a shooting star. But because it stopped for that point, whatever of a second, and pinged off out of the galaxy to elsewhere, I was just like, what the F, basically, you know. But I'm so glad that I'd seen it, because I've never seen anything like it. And in other people's UFO reports, I've never ever heard of anyone seeing something like that. And yeah, I just wanted to share it with people, really, that this is something that I've seen and I can't explain it. So, yeah, peace and one love, YouTube, and all the best, and keep your eyes in the sky. Peace.